this bearing honed out so that it will fit down over the pinion without having to be pressed on, and I'm going to use this to set up my ring and pinion. And what I'm trying to get to is 0.626 inches, which will give me about 1/1000th of clearance on the pinion. And I am at, let's see, 623. It's time consuming, takes a minute, but it's a lot better than pressing on a bearing and not having it be correct. Take these bolts out, and they are reverse thread. Now the ring and pinion set that I've chosen after doing all the research for hours, it sounds like Motive Gear is made by the same company, or is owned by the same company that Richmond Gear is made by. I've heard a lot of good about Motive Gear. They make two different types. They make an OE replacement, and then they make the Performance Series. And I've chosen the Performance Series, excuse me, which has a different part number. The Performance Series comes in the orange and black box. The OE Series, or OE Replacement Series, comes in a blue box. So I'm going to give these a try. I don't know, everybody that all the information that I can get says they're easy to set up, they're very quiet, and they're very strong. So this is what I'm. Okay, drive in the inner pinion bearing race. Okay, and driving the outer pinion bearing race. And that looks good. I've got my new Grizzly locker from Yukon Gear, and I took it out of the box, out of the bag, and this is a 30 spline unit, whereas the stock unit, the stock carrier, was 28 spline. And the very first thing you notice when you take it out, it's going to be greasy and oily. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is clean it, get all the grease and oil off of the mating surface where the ring gear is going to go. So I'm going to use some lacquer thinner to clean that up. next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the ring gear itself, because it's got protective oil on it as well. So we're going to clean the back side. Now we're going to clean the inside where the interference fit is going to go. Piece of cloth to do a final cleaning on it. Okay, then we're going to clean, I'm going to turn it around, I'm going to clean the inside of the gear right in here from these teeth, because it's got this oil that they use on this ring gear is pretty sticky, nasty stuff, and it makes the styrofoam from the packing stick to it, and I don't want that, so I'm going to clean that off as best I can. And then, still using this cloth, I'm going to fold it and make a new clean surface. And I'm going to go back over the carrier one more time. Especially right here where the interference fit is. Okay. I'm also going to clean a little bit inside these teeth. Try to get all the oil out of there. I'm not trying to get these teeth cleaned perfectly, I'm just wanting to kind of get some of the oil out. Try to get all the styrofoam out of the teeth and off the gear. There was no styrofoam in the carrier because the carrier was in a Ziploc bag, and they had just packaged it in the box with cardboard. So it's pretty clean, except for the fact that it's covered in the protective oil. To keep it from rusting or whatever. It took me 7 weeks to get this carrier from the day I ordered it to today. It just came in this afternoon. I'm going to go around the outside of this gear too, just a little bit. Okay, but it's cleaned up. I cleaned out the bolt holes and I cleaned the back side of this carrier a little bit. Now what we want to do is we just want to start all of our ring gear bolts just get them started. They're a left-hand thread, so you go backwards to thread them in. Instead of going clockwise, you go counterclockwise. And we're just starting. We're not tightening them down. We're just getting a couple threads going so that when we pull the ring gear up on the carrier, we can pull it on straight. Okay. Now we need just going to work across just a little bit. A little bit at a time. We're going to try to keep it as straight as we can. using the old bolts out of my old ring gear. I got them cleaned up good. Shouldn't have any problems. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just run all these down, just snug. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to torque all these bolts in a cross pattern, but I'm only going to torque them to about 20 inch or foot-pounds, pound-feet, whatever you want to say. Anyways, I'm going to torque them down to about 20, then I'm going to go to about 30, then 40, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull one out at a time. Pull one out, I'll put some red Loctite on it, I'll put it back in, and I'll torque it to the final torque of 60 foot-pounds. Then I'll pull this one out, do the same, then I'll do a cross pattern until I get all of them completely torqued and with red Loctite. And I'll go ahead and show you a couple of them. It's not get where I can get a nice smooth pull. Over here. Okay, there's that one. Feel it move just a little bit, and if it moves, you know that it didn't get it. I think I got all of them. We'll just go right back around and just check. Not that one. It's probably not this one down here. Okay. Okay. That's exactly how I'm going to do it. Now I'm going to go to 30 foot-pounds, and then I'm going to go to 40. Actually, I'll probably just go ahead and just go to 40 foot-pounds. Then I'm going to pull them out one at a time, lube it, put it back in, or not lube it, Loctite it, put it back in, and then torque it to the final torque of 60 foot-pounds. Alright, now we're pressing the bearings onto the carrier. I've cleaned the bearings really good. I've already got one pressed on. but I'll show you what to do. You need to find something, because this won't work, so you got to find something to press against that'll sit right inside on this inner lip, just on this inner lip here, and not touch this outer cage. And then at the same time, it's got to have a big enough inside diameter to go around the first little bit of this lip right here on the carrier. That's how I've got it set up. Make sure that it's perfectly straight, and I mean perfectly straight. And then on she goes. Just keep going until you see it, until you see the bearing bottom out on the carrier, and you're done. All there is to it. I got these two pieces out of a ball joint press kit. This thing worked perfect for me. See, it doesn't hit that lip right there that just protrudes, but yet it doesn't hit this outside cage either. And this rotates nice and easy. So we're good now. Here I got the pinion depth set, finally. I had a little bit of a problem. I had cut the original nut in half to use it on here as I assembled and disassembled my new pinion assembly until I got the depth set properly. And because I'd cut it in half, it was only getting about 2 or 3 threads. And I put it together and tightened it up. I got my preload set, checked the depth, and then when I went to take it back apart, the nut would not come off. And that's what I got. So, what I've done now, I had to wait for a new ring and pinion to come in, but I went and I bought just a regular 7/8 fine thread nut, and I've been using this to set up the new pinion, and this is working out much better. So I've got my depth set on my new pinion, and now instead of using a crush sleeve, this is the old crush sleeve, instead of doing this, because I was kind of paranoid that I would over tighten it or over crush it, and then I'd have to buy a new one, and then I might overdo that one, and you know, I just didn't want to mess with it. Plus, on top of that, you can't torque your nut down good and tight. You keep tightening it until you get your preload, and then you stop and you get what you get. So instead, I bought a crush sleeve eliminator. So you get this, and then you get, I got a couple of shims here, and then you get all of these shims. Just an assortment of shims to go on it. And what I'm doing rather, is I'm keeping notes. I started out with 30 thousandths of shim, and it was way too loose. So I dropped 3 thousandths, still too loose, down to 25, still too loose. 23, I think it's just barely starting to give me just a touch of preload. So now I'm going to come down, I'm going to take 2 thousandths more out, and that'll give me 21 thousandths plus this piece. And that should, I'm hoping, get my preload set and torqued, and then I'm going to be done. All I'll have to do is take the yoke back off, put my seal in, and my pinion will be finished. But I would suggest, if you're ever doing this, don't take the original nut. I have a new lock nut here. This one is not really the same design of the original. But I don't suggest that you cut this part out or cut it in half, because it just ain't got enough threads in it. And you will pull the threads while you're assembling and disassembling. So that's where I'm at right now, and once I get this crush sleeve eliminator set to the right depth, or the right height, whatever you want to say, and get my preload set. Then I'll show you the carrier and how to... Alright, got my pinion set, everything's ready to go. I took the yoke off so I can put the seal in, and we're just going to use the socket that fits it. Drive that in there. Just blow off the nonsense. All right. I think we're about there. Let me just... Okay. All right. Okay, now we're going to put just a little bit of grease around this seal before I put the yoke back on. Okay, now I'll put the yoke back on. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the yoke down with just the regular nut, and then I'll put the lock nut on after that. Now, I'm going to put some red Loctite on it. I guarantee you that's over 150 foot-pounds. I don't know exactly how much, but it's tight. And we should be good now. Alright, I've got the carrier in place, and I've got the caps on. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to torque the bolts to 25 foot-pounds to check the backlash. Okay, looks like we got about 8 thousandths. About 8 thousandths backlash. It's supposed to be between 7 and 9 thousandths. So, alright, now that we got the carrier in and we got the backlash set, I'm just going to check the preload one more time. And we got just about 35 inch-pounds. Yep. 35 or 36 inch-pounds. That's about perfect, I think. That's 25. I had 25 inch-pounds on just the pinion. With the carrier in, it went up to about 35. So that's about 10 inch-pounds. You have to multiply by 373 because that's my gear ratio, 3.73 to 1. So you're looking at 25 and it went to 35, so that's about 10. It's pretty snug, but I think it's good. I can move it by hand, no problem. So I think we're good. I'm just gonna mark the gears with some marking compound and check my pattern. Next step is to get a gear mesh pattern. So I've got some marking compound. I don't have a brush to brush it on, so I'm going to use a swab. And I'm just going to mark, just going to put a little bit on. A few teeth. That actually is working better than I thought it would. I did the coast side of the gear first. Now I'm going back over the drive side. I'll go ahead and do one more. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it a little ways, and then I'm going to mark some more teeth. And mark some that I've already marked, but mark the same ones again. That's the coast. This is the drive. Of course, after I do this, I'll have to pull this differential out, clean all this off. more. Mark it right in there, I think. That way I got kind of 3 spots and a kind of a triangle. And that should give me a good indication of where I'm at as far as mesh. I've got the pinion set at exactly what it's supposed to be as far as depth and preload, and exactly what it's supposed to be for backlash as well. So we should see a really good pattern on this ring gear. Okay, let's see how we look. I'm going to go around once. Oh yeah, it's looking good. Yep, that pattern looks really good. Nice and central. Central on the tooth, right where it should be. That's nice. That is perfect. I'll take in, show you what it looks like on the drive side here. Kind of difficult to see with the way the light is, but it looks really, really good. I'll just keep going. I'll show you the next spot here. And the next spot. Okay, now we'll go the opposite way and we'll look at the coast side. I'm just going to spin it all the way around. And then I'll show you the coast side. Okay. The coast side looks pretty good too. Alright, that's that. Now I'll pull this differential out and I'll clean up the ring and pinion, clean that marking compound off, and then I'll put the differential back in. You should have to tap the differential in. It shouldn't just slide in and fall in real easy. And this is how this is. When I go to put it in, I'm using, it's way over here. I'm using just a dead blow soft face hammer and just tapping it. And I just have to just tap it in there and it goes in. It's pretty snug. But from what I understand, it's really difficult to get it too tight. It can be done, but apparently to be too tight, you'd have to get it really, really super snug. And I don't think I'm too tight at all. And that pattern looks really good. I can spin the whole thing with my hand, you know, and it's not a struggle. But I know I've got 25 foot-pounds, or I'm sorry, 25 inch-pounds to turn it with just the pinion, and it's just a pinch over 30 inch-pounds with the differential installed. Alright, so I've got the housing cleaned up. I got the pinion cleaned as best as I can get it. I blew it out with air, the axle tubes and everything. And I'm going to put the shims in, and I'm going to put the carrier in. I've got the ring gear cleaned up as good as I can get it. This is the final assembly. Everything looks pretty good. And as I said, it has to be tapped into place. Make sure when you initially take this apart to rebuild it, make sure you mark or at least somehow keep separate the cap that goes on the left hand side and the cap that goes on the right hand side. I'm even keeping track and make sure the bolts go back in the same holes they came out of. But I'm gonna put some blue Loctite on these. Got the bolts in just snug, and I'm gonna torque them. The manual, the shop manual for this truck says 55 foot-pounds, and I've got a book that says 60, so I'm going to do 60 foot-pounds. Okay. All right. There it is. That's the final assembly. Now all I got to do is I got to drive the axle bearings, axle seals, put the axles in, and put the cover on. Everything is clean and ready. Everything should be looking good. I'm only going to show one side, but we're going to drive this bearing in. See if I can get a better edge. Set for that. Now we need seal. Okay, just drive it in to where it's flush, or just a pinch more than flush. And then before you put your axle in, do the same on the pinion seal. Put just a little bit of grease around here so that it's lubricated. And that's all there is to that. Alright, so I've got the axle cleaned off. I've got the differential pinion taken out of the carrier, out of the differential carrier. And I'm going to install the axles now. I'm only going to show you this side. Now, when you're putting this in, make sure you put a little grease around there, and I've also put some oil on the bearing. And when you put this in, try not to drag it across the seal, because you don't want to get it on the seal and mess up the seal. Alright, there we go, got it in there. Now, okay, we'll bring you over here. And you can see the axle just sticking through there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and do it this way. I'm going to come over here. And I'm going to try and put the C-clip on the axle. And then try to bring the axle back out. Okay. There. Okay, I've got the axles in. Now, I need to put this guy back in there. Just going to barely tap it. Okay. And then, dang it. I just need to tap this piece here in there. Now this is pretty handy. This is a Yukon Grizzly locker. And they made it where this bolt that holds it in will screw into the end of it for you so you can pull it out. Okay, that's in there. It's kind of difficult to work with. They made it so far in there, but that's okay. It's not so bad. We'll get her. I had to take the bearing cap off in order to get my tools in there. They had it marked, so I'm just gonna take it back up to the mark that it was at. I think. Maybe. the axles in. Okay, this is a Moser cover, and it has two little supports for the bearings. This aluminum, made in USA. That's rare. Okay, anyways, these perimeter bolts, they said to torque them to 25 foot-pounds, so I did. There's a couple that are shorter than the rest of them. I believe the shorter ones go here and here. Then you torque these, you run these down until they touch the bearing cap, this one and this one, and that's just a quarter hex, just like the rest of these are. But run it down and you torque it to 5 foot-pounds. Now I put some blue Loctite 243, so it's the oil resistant, on these. I backed them out all the way and put some Loctite on them. I don't know if they went all the way because it's a long ways down there before it gets to the threads. But anyway, I put some Loctite on them because I want to make sure that these seal good. Although they do seem to be pretty snug, I don't think they'll leak. But anyway, I put some blue Loctite oil resistant on it. Then I ran it in, torqued it to 5 foot-pounds. Then I put some blue Loctite on here, put the nut on, and then you torque the nut to 10 foot-pounds. And it's hard to see, but I marked, yeah, you're not going to be able to see, I marked the top of it before I put the nut on to make sure that when I torqued it, it didn't turn that and make it any tighter, which it didn't. I marked this one at the bottom, it didn't move either. So it's pretty good. I believe that's going to be about as strong a 10-bolt differential as you can get. And if I break that, well, I guess I'll have to go to a 12-bolt. That's the finished product. The only thing I don't like is there's no, what do you call it, a dust deflector on this yoke. That's a strange engineering yoke. And it's supposed to be a 1350. It's a 1350 U-joint instead of a 1310. Yeah, so now I've got some touch-up paint to do because turning it over and over and over again has scratched it up, but that should hold a little extra oil, and it should cool the oil a little bit better. And it's not flat inside either. It's curved. And you can kind of see here it's curved like this all the way through, just like the original pan. So it shouldn't interfere with the oil flow, you know, to the front bearings. And yep, we're ready to put it in the truck, which is going to be the trick because when I mount it on the leaf springs, I've got to check the thrust angle, and I'm probably going to have to adjust the thrust angle because if we've got the axle in at an angle, it'll push to the side, and I don't want that. I want it to push straight ahead. So that's where we're at. I've got some disc brakes to put on there, but I'm going to wait until I get it mounted on the truck before I put the brakes and stuff on there. Alright, thanks for watching. If you like it, if you got anything out of it at all, click like, subscribe, all the things, you know. And if there's an easier way to put in a crush sleeve eliminator kit, like if there's a better way than just a whole mess of trial and error, let me know in the comments, because if I ever do this again, I'm still going to use a crush sleeve eliminator because I like how it works, but there's got to be an easier way. Maybe there's not, but if there is, please let me know in the comments. Thanks.